Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 431 for Sunday, April 19th, 2026. Yes, we are finally back after a couple-week hiatus. I think we had Easter in there, and a couple of us were gone last weekend, so we kind of took a little bit of a break. But we are back this week with the two of us, at least. DB had to bow out at the last second, unfortunately. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But I have one Mr. Game Logic with me tonight. Game, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We are well rested, I guess. I assume.
Some of
maybe
us.
Maybe that's an over exaggeration. At any rate, we're here for the show, ready to rock and roll.
Yes, more like I said, more or less, we're well rested. Just in case you've forgotten, since it's been a few weeks, how we do the show is we'll have three segments here. First segment is main GX stories, where we kind of go over our main gaming experiences for the last week or a few weeks, I guess in this case. Not necessarily the newest or the greatest of games that have come out the past week, but maybe something. It could be that, but for me in that case, it's a little bit newer of a game, but it could just be something that's kind of caught our eye for last week. Then we jump into segment 2 with the main news headlines, and then segment 3 with our regular rundown and round robin, where we talk about other games we've been playing throughout the weeks. So let's jump into the first segment, main GX stories, and it looks like I just have myself here on the main GX stories. I've been playing, as you can see in my background, Marathon. Picked it up about a week and a half ago. So now it's been playing it on PC. I picked it up off on Steam. If you don't know, this is the extraction shooter, the newest of the extraction shooters from one developer of Bungie, which is now owned, I believe, totally owned now by Sony. Which actually, now I think about it, is because they plaster that Sony splash screen right at the beginning when you turn the game on, and you can't get past it. Of course, I really hate when games do that. But the game itself, I'm actually enjoying the game a little. So I've played some extraction shooters in the past, Arc Raiders, and I can't remember that. What's the other one? Breakpoint. I can't really remember what the game was anymore. I think you've played a little bit of it. Game Logic.
Arena. I'll have to
Breakout. I think it's
Infinite Breakout. Arena.
Yeah.
Infinite Breakout, I think.
Yeah. So this one's I guess Arc Raiders kind of futuristic, kind of post-apocalyptic of sorts. This one is even further in the future, where you're kind of out in space, and without giving there's kind of a little bit of story beats at the beginning. They kind of do a thing, kind of animation, and kind of it looks like kind of real world stuff, like scientific-y stuff, like they show like scientists working on stuff or whatnot. But the gist of it is you dropped onto this planet, Tau Ceti, and you have to extract with, of course, any kind of loot that you can get. Um, it's kind of more of an overarching story. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not familiar with Marathon itself. Like I know it's, there was a shooter before this way back in the day. I don't think I ever played it. Not that I remember. It's kind of more like Doom graphics, I believe, if I remember correctly. Like pixelated kind of art, Doom style, original Doom. Um, but this was obviously fully 3D. Environments. You drop into. I think right now they have 4 or 5 different maps that you can drop in, and you kind of unlock them as you level up. I think I just unlocked the third one recently, called the Outpost, I believe. You have first one was Perimeter, which you start off as kind of like the main kind of tutorial level. Well, not I shouldn't say tutorial level, but like kind of tutorial map that they kind of give you. Say, hey, this is you get dropped into this. You got to do certain things within the map and stuff. But once I leveled up a little, I got Dire Marsh, which is the second one you get into, and they seem all fairly the same size so far. I don't really think anyone's smaller or bigger than the other ones, at least not too much. Not that I've can really tell. They do seem smaller. They do seem smaller than some of the other games I've played, just in general. These maps, but still, still fairly big. You get enough room that you're not like bumping into, another solo or set of, another group like right out of the gate usually. So that's kind of nice. I think maybe one of the other ones you unlock might be a little bit smaller. I thought I was reading somewhere, or there's something where it's kind of hot and heavy. It gets hot and heavy like pretty much right away. So, but I haven't hit that one yet. I think that's the last map you get, or that last map might be like a ranked map of some kind. I think because I guess it's like super hard in some way. I haven't really read up too much on it. I'm just kind of, I like to experience things as I go along in the game and not read on it too much. So, but like I said, you just you get dropped into the map, you going through. You have, of course, other players that you can encounter while you're going through these maps, and then there's AI enemies also, and they're not as hard, I would say, as arc raiders, at least not to me, not so far. And there's kind of various types. There's kind of the um, the majority of them are robots, but there are some, I guess, creatures. Not really. I haven't seen any humanoid like aliens or anything, but other than just kind of like spider creatures, and that's pretty much it. Actually, kind of like spider-like creatures. Um, but yeah, the majority of them have been like just bipedal AI robots. There's some like kind of flying drones too. Sometimes kind of come at you, and like I said, various degrees of difficulty. If you're in a group, I should say this: if you're in a group, yeah, it's not too hard. Taking out the kind of more difficult enemies, they're kind of more bulkier, and they have like shields that they can throw up to. So obviously, you take the shields down, and then they're pretty vulnerable after that. But then, of course, along the way, just like in all other extract shooters, you have different kind of missions that you can do, different quests for the various. There's like corporations, basically, or sponsors that you do these quests for, and those. When you unlock those, there's kind of like another kind of animation and kind of a story beat that they give you along the way, and those are kind of interesting. Just to kind of see the different styles of these corporations. And I think the one is just like a rebel group rebelling against all these corporations, kind of in that vein. So I believe I have unlocked all the sponsors or corporations in the game. And now I'm just starting at the very first one that you get, and kind of just trying to go through that whole thing. As usual, I like to go through, as I unlock things. So even though like as you unlock, these different corporations, they give you different buffs and different kind of power-ups that they'll give you. Like the first ones seem to be mainly focused more on the kind of like inventory and how much money you can get and that kind of stuff, health a little bit more. And then the other ones seem to be more kind of buffs on how the weapons are handled. Like maybe they give you more ammo, or you get to shoot a little bit faster or something like that. So so there's those kind of things you can deal with too. And then the guns, they're futuristic, but they're basically kind of pared down into an AR or SMG and shotguns and stuff like that, snipers. So it's still kind of familiar. At least the classes, the guns just might be more futuristic. They do have kind of ballistic and then kind of like laser weapons. So you do have that kind of difference, which is kind of nice, because then that kind of goes back to the buffs you can get, where hey, you might get less damage from a ballistic weapon than from an energy weapon or something like that. So it's you kind of have to balance yourself as depending on where you're going or how you want to approach these maps or what you want to do. A lot of times, well, at least right now, I'm going in and actually trying to do the quests. So I'll try to tailor my loadout to that. And like, once again, extraction shooter, so you got your different loadouts that you can do, or well, you got your loadout. You can't. I don't think there's any way to save like different ones. You just you have the one loadout that you can just kind of mess with as you're going into each map or each round. And then of course you got your inventory, like I said, that you can update and stuff. So I've been updating that inventory as much as I can, like right away, because I'm a hoarder when I play these games. So although I think I'm gonna kind of switch my way of thinking, and instead of like trying to hoard everything and get all these weapons, I'm just gonna start using all this stuff, which is obviously what you want to do, because if you have this better gear on you, you're gonna probably do a lot better when you're going in there. So I'm gonna try to do that a little bit more, because I've been hitting that limit on my inventory kind of quickly. So then I have to throw out a bunch of stuff, and there's the weapons. Obviously, there's backpacks, different backpacks that you can get, like just a straight backpack that gives you extra space. Some that gives you like a medical backpack that does give you a little bit, like maybe like one extra row or two little sections of your inventory, but it makes you like heal faster when you're trying to heal one of your teammates. It does that a little bit faster. So there's kind of different kind of backpacks too, which I don't think I've ever seen before, other than just kind of being bigger, like bigger backpacks. But I think there's like some kind of ammo backpack that gives you more ammo and stuff like that, or you can hold more ammo. So it's kind of interesting. And then of course you got your attachments for each gun, and then other kind of little cores, what they call them, basically just kind of buffs that give you as you go into each round. But I've been enjoying it. I've actually been playing it at least during the week, pretty much every day. Getting at least like an hour or so in. So in each round's probably, I mean, obviously it can differ, but I say if you stick to the end, I think it's a 25-minute time limit you get when you first go in there. So you have that much time to do all your stuff and before you can extract. Now the extraction points open up before that end of that 25 minutes, but they kind of just give you an overall 25-minute time limit, which I guess there's time limits. I have never really like noticed an actual like general time limit. There's usually just like, hey, you got to extract, before everybody else does or something like that. So
Yeah, there's usually a definitely like a time limit, like like in Arena Breakout Infinite that you were just mentioning. There's like a timer, and so at different points along that countdown, extraction points spawn, and then some extraction points will disappear. So if there's like 5 extraction points, there's 2 of them. Sometimes they're premium, or sometimes they're located, in the vicinity of like a specific loot item. And so you can, or like very often I feel like Arena Breakout Infinite does it where it's an item, but it's not a quest item, but it's like an extra. So like if you want to go for like the extra credit thing, and which is high risk, and extract quickly, you can do that, right? If you manage your time to get the main quest objective and then go after this other thing. And those are also usually ones that are kind of close or like mid map, and then the ones that are left are the ones that are out at the further edges of the map. But yes, generally, yeah, definitely there's a countdown. Now, I've never exceeded mission time, so I don't know what happens when like the timer runs out. I assume if you don't extract, before it's all over, then you don't get any of the loot out of it and you have to do it over again. But I don't know if you remember, I don't think you were on that episode. It was an episode that I was talking to DBQ about it, and I mentioned like there was this person that I ran with who was just super aggressive, and at the end of the day got us all shot up, like constantly going after stuff that was not necessary. And then we were both injured. We were like breathing heavily, which in Arena Breakout Infinite means you're louder because people could hear it. And he was like, I need some health. And an analgesic, anything. And I'm like, dude, I have nothing left. Like you drove us into all these firefights. But the point is that when we were trying to extract, so we're limping, huffing, puffing, wheezing loudly, trying to get to these last extraction points. And again, I distinctly remember like the timer was running down. So I was like, great, when we get to these extraction points, right, it's highly likely that there's the potential that other people are going to be there right, trying to get out or laying in wait, because they know people are trying to extract. So that's just my one little aside on timers.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just more obvious in this game, but I guess I don't know because it's kind of just in the corner all by itself. Like it's not with the other stuff on the screen, like the map or your ammo and stuff like that. It's just kind of sitting there like all the time, and maybe it kind of disappears in other games, and then you can bring it up or whatever. But it's like always there. I guess that's kind of the one thing that's a little bit of a negative in this game is that the UI is like it's very busy. Like I said, it's got the time, it's got the map, it's got your ammo, it's got obviously your teammates and stuff on one side if you go with the team. I don't know. It just seems like it's very like it's just a little bit too busy, and I think I've seen a lot of complaints about that too, and about the game. Like, but other than that, like obviously it's a Bungie game, so the shooting itself is just like it's stellar. Like it's on point. Like you could tell it's a Bungie game with just by the shooting by itself. So I don't have any problems with the actual gameplay itself. And then obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but then also there's different basic classes you can pick from. I believe there's like 5 different classes. I've only played. Well, I should say I've mostly been playing like the medic class, which gives you. I think you get 2 drones that you can kind of throw out either to yourself or to people, and that slowly regenerates your health and shields, which is actually kind of nice. And then once you use those 2 up, I think it takes like, I don't know, like 30 or 40 seconds for them to kind of regenerate, and then you can kind of throw them out again. So kind of nice that they regenerate like that too. It's not like just like a one-time use. Then you have like, like a thief class and kind of like stealth class where the actual person can go invisible. That might even be the thief too, but and just kind of some of the other ones that one guy has like a double jump, like which the other players don't, the other classes don't. So that's kind of nice. And then actually there is 4, and then there's a 5th one, which is the Rook, which is basically it's like a free class. Basically, you go in just already stacked up. But you only when you pick that class, you go in as a solo like automatically, and then you can only, which I think is kind of weird. You can only go into a game that's already in progress, so you get dropped in. I don't know if it's like halfway through the time or there's some kind of time that you get dropped into the map. So or the map that's already has already started its timer. So it's kind of interesting. Like I played that I think like a little bit at the beginning before I had like unlocked some of the other classes. So that was kind of interesting. I think actually with that class, I probably had a little bit more success at the beginning before I started using the medic class, just because I was able to kind of, since I was already like halfway through, I'm assuming either people got taken out right away or just like people were busy doing other stuff. But I was able to go in there and like get a bunch of stuff and get out pretty much right away. So it was kind of interesting to have just kind of that lock class that only goes in as solo. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
So these classes you go in, and so when you run, and the game is built around trios, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
As a group, yeah.
So when you go in as a class, do you have any sense of like is matchmaking trying to match you with people who are distinctly other classes, or is there a hard lockout that like you can't you're not going to be paired up to go into a match with like 2 medics?
Oh, you know what? That's a good question. No, I don't think there is any kind of I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I've never really noticed like anyone else playing a medic like when I played it, but I could have sworn I've seen clips of people being like both people being thieves. I might have been wrong though, and maybe it was just something else, but or they could have had like another device that makes you invisible. Because I could have sworn there was a couple people that actually went invisible, which I believe is only locked to one class as far as the classes go. But I don't think you can. I think you have to pick different ones. I believe I have to double check. I'll have to look up on that and get back to you because that would be kind of broken. I think. Like if you had
So
a whole team of medics would be pretty much unstoppable.
So even if there's not like a hard lockout, like so designating classes is dangerously close and skirting to, hey, and it's just Henry Heck just checked in the chat. And I know Henry has been playing a ton of Marathon. I think Henry, it's your new main. So even if it's classes, right? That classes still flirts with heroes, and we know you're not a hero shooter person. So I have been wanting to ask, like, is that aspect a turn off to the game, or do you feel like it's more? Henry mentions it is his main multiplayer now. Is it more akin to the way classes are like in Battlefield and the way they were in Star Wars Battlefront? In terms of it's kind of additive, but it's not like super discrete and super segmented in terms of you being so hyper specialized that, like I said, it makes it feel more like a hero shooter than just classes.
I don't think so, because all the classes can use all the guns basically. So you're not like locked to. It's more than just like the abilities that you get. And like I said, and now that I think about it more, I don't. I think you might be locked like which class you pick, because like I said, having like a 3 medic team would be pretty. Even the thieves too, or the stealth, because you can go invisible, and it's. I don't know how long the duration's like. I've never used it, so I'm not sure. But it seems from the clips I've seen, it's pretty decent. Like when you're invisible for the time that that you get that ability. So I mean, that'd be pretty broken if that was the case.
I mean,
So yeah, it's not. I don't. I do play I play Marvel Rivals, but that's pretty much the only hero shooter I play. I tried, like I've said, I've dipped my toe in Overwatch, and I kind of bounced off that, and really I didn't get back into it until Marvel Rivals, and that was more because of the IP, really. But yeah, I don't see it as like a detriment to have the classes.
I mean, we're going to talk about Call of Duty later tonight, but I know that is one. I don't know if that's I think that's a must be a field upgrade. I know that like oh no, that is that's actually a tactical. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a field upgrade or I think it's a field upgrade, but I know that it active camo thing in Call of Duty, I do feel like is a game breaking thing in Call of Duty, because the notion of people going invisible in an arena shooter kind of drives me nuts. But that's another side. So are you locked to like when you pick your class? Do you stay locked to that class? Like, can you respec, or is it even just is it even just like you can like? Is there a progression track for classes, or do you just like pick a class before you go into each match?
I mean, you can. I don't think for each class is a progression. It's more of just the corporations or the sponsors that you get, where that's where the skill tree is. It's not locked to a class, as far as I can tell. Um, and Henry Heck says that the faster you move, the quicker the invisibility runs out, because it takes heat.
Yeah,
which is stamina. Yeah.
Which is, to me, is kind of the same way it works, like in Crisis. When you have a camo, like if you run, then it hits the energy expenditure faster, so the camo doesn't last as long.
And then sorry, I was trying to look up something. Doesn't say. Just as far as matchmaking too, just to go back to that. I believe from what I've read, like if you go in as a group, it'll try to obviously kind of like an arc raiders. It'll try to get you in with other groups, not so much solos, unless there's a rook in there. But you can pick solo and no fill, and that I believe when you do that, it does try to put you in as many solos as can, I guess, at the time. Like if there's other solos available, so that's kind of nice.
And then you mentioned you're changing your loadout a little. It's kind of interesting because EVE Online, it just in this past week launched like a new version of kind of its high sec zone. So like the area you can kind of hang out in without worrying about being ganked, by other players. And it's interesting because I was reading up on it, and reading about people's opinions on it, and I was reminded of the age-old EVE Online thumb rule, which is never take only fly the ships into space that you have the capability to pay to replace, right? So never risk anything unless you have like the money or credits or whatever to replace it. So are you kind of following that thumb rule in Marathon? And B, I know you mentioned you're switching things around, but like, have you settled on kind of like a paradigm or a framework for like what your loadout is, even if you're switching weapons? Like, is there, and I don't know how, like, if weapons are graded, like, do you have a thing like I'm always going to take like a 300 to 700 point weapon, and then my 2P is going to be like a 100 to 300 point weapon, or anything like that?
I believe there's kind of rarities, but I think the rarities kind of count or kind of go to like how much attachments, as far as I can tell, that you put on it. So it's not like it's not like um, Fortnite with the different rarities where you might have one AR rifle, but it actually changes. Not because of like attachments and stuff, but just because it's okay. This is the gray rarity is just kind of super weak, and the highest rarity is super strong, but not because of attachments, just because it's super strong. Like that's how they did it. Here it's more about the attachments, like what you put on it. So I mean, it's um, not not too bad, like from other games that I've seen. Because obviously there's you can put scopes and all other kind of stuff on it. So it's kind of yeah. Henry X says yeah, it's attachment based. So if you throw a bunch of green attachments on there, then the gun will upgrade to a green or a blue, etc. So yeah. So yeah, it's not too bad. I'm sorry. What was the first question? The first part of the question you had asked?
Have you set it on any kind of like a frame? Well, kind of like you said, right? So if there's not like a like weapons rate or a gear score for stuff, like have you set it into a paradigm? Like I'm always, if I have, and again, I guess I'm going to use kind of Fortnite colors. Like so, if I own like 3 purple weapons, like once every 3 missions, I'm going to take a purple weapon. But most of the time, I'm going to take like the next level below of weapon, blue or gold or whatever. Have you kind of settled into that type of framework so that like, because it's funny you mentioned, you've been playing like an hour, and I'm like an hour, like I can't get anything done in an extraction shooter in an hour. Like I was just recently going through this because like my gaming kind of style approach has flipped back to like the grind, right? And these games that are multiplayer and progression oriented. Um, and I was thinking about extraction shooters and kind of working out like my whole time management thing, and I'm like, no, like if I need to have blocked off at least 2 hours, which is kind of my normal shtick for gaming, but like with an extraction shooter, I'm like I really want 3, and that's because the in between mission do loop for me is just so much more intricate. Like it's you're constantly getting new gear, you're constantly going and trading stuff in, you're constantly building and crafting stuff in between. So that loadout paradigm can get complicated, and you're constantly assessing, okay, what's my inventory, what's my best stuff, like what's the stuff I'm not going to risk, am I going to like put that in a crate or a locker or something so that I don't even look at it like when I'm prepping to go out on my next mission. So like have you kind of settled into those types of frameworks? And like, and again, to me, if you're only spending an hour a night, that's where I'd want to be like super hyper efficient, right, at that in between mission loop, because I gotta move through that quickly in order to get like 2 missions in a 1 hour time block.
Yeah, and kind of like Henry Heck was saying here, he says you can get a decent amount done in an hour if you play efficiently. Contracts don't actually take that long, so as long as you're not getting killed constantly. So yeah, that's what I was doing. I was just doing contracts. So I would just, as soon as I finished my contract, I would just extract or try to. Like if I was in a group, I would try to, if they had, because it kind of lists like what each person does. I think that's the other part of the problem too, with the UI. Like it lists everybody's missions, which you can minimize that. But I kind of like to have that up all the time, but it's still kind of annoying like to have it up. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Um, so I'll go in, like if I'm just doing contracts or missions, I'll just go and do that. Like I said, I'll try to get out, and usually it's not too bad. Like I can do a good amount of stuff in an hour. But if I'm just sitting there like just to play, like I just want to go in and play a shooter, that might take a little bit longer, and obviously I'll only get like a couple of games, maybe 3 games at the most. But going back to the weapons, initially, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was just keeping I was just going with a gray weapon, and you do get these. I don't want to call them loot boxes, but they're basically loot boxes that they give you a gun. They give you a bunch of gear in these boxes that you get from these different corporations. And I was just using those and just like hoarding everything else. But now I am going to switch and I'll just use my base guns first. So I'll start off with all my gray weapons. Once I use those, I'll just keep going up the tiers until I don't have anything, and I'll just restock everything, up once again. So yeah, I will start doing that kind of frame of mind where I'm just going to use everything as much as I can, and whatever I have, especially the attachments. Like I noticed I have a lot of attachments because I wasn't putting those on the guns really all that often. But and obviously that's kind of stupid because obviously, like I said before, if you have those attachments on there, that's going to be a lot better for yourself, in the game in those runs. So
Well, and that's what like it's just before. I mean, I've kind of popped out of like I did a block of like extraction shooter stuff like when Arcane Raiders when Arc Raiders came out in the month of December, because I was kind of spooling up for Tarkov had also just dropped, and I was like, okay, am I going to get on board with Marathon? And I did really find a do loop that I like. Again, to me, part of the constraint now is I feel like, again, if I'm going to play that, then I want like 3 hours, and maybe that's also because I was onboarding to a lot of extraction shooters at the time. But one of the things like that definitely ran through my mind before I checked out was I was like, because I was talking to myself, me, but also because I'm paying attention to like what everyone else says about extraction shooters, and I'm kind of like, so we all fall into this paradigm that I just mentioned of like, you don't risk like your most valuable gear. But then just before I checked out, I was kind of like, okay, but like the whole point of gathering valuable gear is to use it in combat. So like, so why don't you take it to improve the chance that you're not going to lose it? And then if you lose it, you just use your regular gear. Cause like, and again, I think most of my familiarity and most of like the progressive loot that I had gathered was in Arena Breakout Infinite. And I was like when I have a super powerful weapon, like it's great, but I'm also not completely useless like with a base weapon, and I'm always getting new stuff. So are we overly wrapping ourselves around the axle about that paradigm versus in EVE Online, where I'm like, okay, no, when you have a great ship, you do not want to take that out, right? On like a milk run, if you're going to take it out, it's because like there's something really big important going on. And I never joined a corporation, but like in my mind, that's like you would only take that out if your corporation was going and doing like a big, like large scale space battle raid, right, against another corporation. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, thanks, Henrik. They're called sponsored kits. Those kind of kits that you can get from the different sponsors and corporations. Yeah, like I said, I'm just going to start using my stuff basically, because yeah, it is kind of dumb just to not use your upgraded gear and all this other stuff. Excuse me, and all the core. Like I said, there's a core thing that you can plan on yourself to give you extra power ups or whatnot. So I'm definitely gonna start using that. They have a good variety of stuff you can bring to. Like obviously you get different kind of grenades and claymores you can even put down, and all this other stuff. So it's kind of cool. They have all these things. I haven't seen. I don't think they have any kind of different like ammo. Like it's just other than like medium or heavy and stuff like that. I don't think there's not like incendiary ammo as far as I've seen or anything like that. And Hero Down Under, thanks for joining us too. He just popped in the chat a minute ago. But the one thing I did kind of mention, the one negative was the UI. The other kind of negative, at least for me, is the game when you're in like the buildings in like a human based area. It's like super colorful, like to my detriment, because everything kind of almost looks the same at certain points especially when you're trying to run from people or run from the AI or whatever. It's just like kind of gets confusing sometimes. So that's the only other negative I would say on this game. Is like sometimes a little too colorful, and the colors are like bright, like neon, like yellows, like kind of like you see on my background, well, neon yellows and oranges and blues and stuff like that. So it gets a little confusing sometimes. But otherwise, like I said, I've been really enjoying this game. Like I said, I've been playing for the last at least week and a half or so. So I've been having a ton of fun with it.
Now, did you onboard to Arc Raiders also?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So these are 2 paid games. They're not free to play. So, I mean, so question 1, were you that curious about the extraction shooter genre that you were willing to plunk down for both of these things? And is one grabbing you more than the other? Or do you see yourself playing kind of balanced, right? Like trying to get your ROI out of both an equivalent amount? Is there any type of like seasonal or weekly dynamic, like Henry Heck just mentioned, so you'd spend all week collecting good gear from Outpost or the lesser maps and jump into Ranked or Cryo Arch for the 3 days over the weekend. And before that, he mentioned Marathon kind of set it up where you want to use your best stuff on the weekends for Cryo Archive. Or, so is it, are you going to play each half and half? is there a seasonal or event driven dynamic that says, you know, in order to get my max ROI, I got to play this like during these certain times or whatever? Or is one grabbing your attention more than the other and you're planning on putting more skin on one of the two?
I could see. I'd probably do a little bit balanced playtime for each of them. Just right now, obviously, because it's a new game for me, I'm playing more marathon. Uh, I find myself being less, or no, I shouldn't say less. Find myself being more stressed in this game for some reason. I think it's more like even when I'm solo, like people will just shoot you like on the spot. It's not like Arc Raiders where you can go solo and for the most part you'll find some pretty decent people that'll either leave you alone or even work with you at times. But here it's just like I don't think I've ever found any friendly people in marathon going solo or groups. Obviously in groups you just start shooting everybody up, but I do find myself being a little bit more on edge. Like it's a little bit more, you have to be a little bit more tactical in this game. Even with the AI, like the sound is pretty good, I would say, in this game. Kind of like in Arc Raiders. Like you can hear shooting from like super far away. You can tell it in your headphones, or even if you're just playing. Like I have speakers too that I'll play on those, and it's a fairly decent sound system or sound design. And if you start shooting up like the AI, obviously other people are going to hear you, and like 99% of the time, like you're going to get third party like right away, like instantly when that happens. There's other visual cues. Excuse me. There's like these little flying creatures, like they're grouped up, and I think they have them in Dark Raiders too. Like if you get near them, they'll fly away, and obviously you can hear and see that. Like if you're like it kind of in the area. But yeah, it's definitely more tense in Marathon than Arc Raiders or any. I wouldn't say the other shooters too. The other shooters probably tense too, but definitely more than Arc Raiders. And so I do find myself. I actually find myself if kind of the lesser level enemies, you can pretty much just melee them within like a couple strikes, maybe even one strike. I think if you get them from behind. So I've been doing that. Been trying to do that a lot more than just trying to shoot them. But of course, going with teammates and they just start shooting up everything. So it's like, okay, well, that kind of defeats the purpose. So definitely when I'm solo queuing, I'll try to melee those guys. And I think the big guys, I don't even think you can melee. I think they just bounce right off when you try to hit them. You just have like a little knife when you do that. So when you do the melee, but I don't even think it even hurts them as far as I can tell. But you definitely have to shoot them. And then there's some missions too where you got to take out some of the elite guards. I think they're called or something like that. So they're the heavier guys. So you kind of have to start shooting at that point. But yeah, sometimes you just got to go for it, I think too. So that can maybe be to your advantage sometimes. Like if you do see somebody else there and, there's some robots there or AI guys, you can kind of shoot them and maybe, get the other guys, have them shoot those guys too. So, you can play tactically if you want to.
And that tension that you talk about, that always being on edge, number one was one of the things that I found most enjoyable about finally trying out extraction shooters in a way that's different than like an arena shooter. Like, Call of Duty standard shtick or paradigm is I'm either heading in the direction of where I see skulls, or and even when I'm en route there, if I hear gunfire off in another direction, then I turn right and head into the gunfire because that's where the kills are going to be. Whereas in an extraction shooter, it's like you hear that stuff and it's like I immediately start thinking about, okay, let me figure out like an elliptical path or a circuitous path to like approach where I heard that sound from. And sometimes, and it's also 50-50, right? In terms of, again, in Call of Duty, when I hear gunshots, I always turn in that direction. I always turn in the direction of skulls. But in an extraction shooter, I'm like, sometimes I do. And then sometimes I'm like, I hear that, but like, depending on where I am, if I know I'm downhill from where I heard that sound and I cannot get into the high ground position, then it's like, let me try and move around like the base of this hill so that I can't be seen and actually just try and avoid this firefight because I can't get the jump on the guy. But I also think, but the other thing that makes me think is, I personally think that's the way, I don't want to say extraction shooters were meant to be. I think that's the way most extraction shooters play, right? In terms of like how they make you feel and incentivize you. And I think it's going to be interesting to kind of do like the rearward look in the post-mortem on Arc Raiders, right? Like hopefully years from now, because hopefully it sticks around, right? When it's time for us to kind of look back. I think there was this lull, right? There was this period of like that kind of social media influencing where quite honestly, like a lot of influencers were running around saying, "Oh, Arc Raiders is friendly. Everybody gets along. And I'm like, bruh, that is not how extraction shooters normally play. And I think you're setting people up to think like it's all going to be like touchy feely and friendly, and that like and as we see, like it's turning out to not be that case. There's some healthy tension. I hear one of the last recent things I heard about Arc Raiders was that it's kind of having its EVE Online moment, where in terms of like what drives a lot of EVE Online is a lot of like self-determination and providence of the player community. Like, we are going to band together and form these corporations. Now that we are this corporation, we're going to go after that corporation. And a lot of events, a lot of things that happen in the universe are driven by large bodies of players deciding they're going to do a thing, or like players decide they're going to pull off a heist, or players decide they're going to pull off a hack and drain all this corporation's money, and then that starts a war or whatever. So I hear that in Arc Raiders, there's this concerted effort now to make bounties for streamers that are toxic players, and so that's creating like a whole thing. So maybe that will reverse, but yeah, my general feeling is Arc Raiders kind of lulled and conditioned people into thinking like extraction shooters were not a thing that they are, whereas like the feeling you're saying you're feeling, and the way you're playing and the way people are playing Marathon is quite honestly the way I think most extraction shooters go down.
Yeah, Arc Raiders is definitely the exception to the rule, because yeah, you're definitely going to get shut up. And even when I was playing Breakout, and I never played Tarkov, but there's one other one I played. And you're pretty much getting shot on sight, like no questions asked. So I don't remember Tarkov. I don't know if Tarkov has proximity chat or not. This does. You have proximity chat in Marathon. So obviously you can try to plead your case if you want, but I haven't even tried that. I just go ahead and guns blazing, because it's like I'm usually in a group anyway, so it's everyone's shooting. And just to go back to one of your questions, I haven't seen any. It's only like a month old, almost a month and a half now, Marathon. I haven't seen any special events yet. And like I said, I've only had it for like a week and a half, so I might not have had it long enough, or it might not be out long enough. But I know Arc Raiders, I think, is doing spot to do like a special thing. I was just reading yesterday, or maybe early this morning, so that they're going to do some kind of special event. So so they're doing it at least, and they do. This one does, and Arc Raiders does have a I was gonna say Game Pass, not Game Pass, like a Battle Pass, which there's a free tier on it too. So I don't know. I'm not. I didn't even buy the Battle Pass for this. I was just like, I'll just take whatever the free stuff I get is. That's fine. Like, I'm not even gonna deal with that right now. But yeah, but it's so just how it is, I guess, right now. So I've kind of backed away from all Battle Passes right now, like even for Fortnite and stuff. So I'm just kind of letting that go for now. So maybe in the future, if something really catches my eye, or if I go back to Marvel Rivals, like head on like I did before, maybe I'll almost start buying that one again. But kind of over, I think, Battle Passes right now. So I'll just take whatever they give you in the game. So just to go back to a couple things that Henry Heck said. You spend all week collecting goods from good gear from outpost or lesser maps, and then jump into ranked and or the Cryo Arch, excuse me, for the 3 days over the weekend. And that's the last map I haven't or the last piece I haven't unlocked yet was the Cryo Arch. So I have to do that before I can start doing that. I've just been hoarding stuff just to hoard stuff, because that's kind of my mentality and just playing games. So and then the AI actually makes like players how they dodge and take cover or even hide in corners. Yeah, the AI is actually pretty decent. Now, there's been a bunch of times where I thought I was shooting actually, an actual real person, and I was like, oh shoot, that was an AI. So sometimes they can kind of have a similar visual. Like some of them have like kind of like a little cape or something, and that's what some of the other players have. So so yeah, sometimes it can get confusing with what's an AI and what's a real person. And I don't think there's no visual like cue either. Like that doesn't show like a little arrow above their head, or if it's a real person or anything like that. It's just it's just a person, or it's an AI. So you can't tell the difference. Yeah, that's been my my Marathon week and a half ish so far. So I'll keep playing it so far for now.
Yeah, and Nate mentions fam, EVE Online drives me crazy when you just want to PvE. Yeah, I'd just be straight up like EVE is just not a game designed for you to PvE. Like, the only way for you to effectively PvE is to band together with a corporation or a gang or a squad, like, or a military, whatever, like one of these large, in-game social groups, so that basically when you go out and fly, you're with a large enough group or a powerful enough group that like you're not going to get dorked with, by somebody trying to gank. And then Henry Heck says it's not going to do any good, and I think he's talking about proximity chat. They're going to smoke you like a Newport, and yeah, I want to say maybe it is Escape from Tarkov, or maybe it was Marathon too. Like, because at some point I thought they didn't have proximity chat, but one of those two designers basically said, "Yeah, we didn't put proximity chat in, or we're not putting proximity chat in, for a game where everybody's just going to go to PvP like on site. Like, it doesn't make any sense." So yeah, pretty interesting. So that is so that's awesome. Yeah, it's giving me the itch. I haven't gone back to Arena Breakout. I tried to onboard to Delta Force a little bit. It's weird because Delta Force has other modes besides just the extraction mode, so I haven't really gotten. Yeah, I was just barely starting to learn the mechanics, but I have been thinking about onboarding to Marathon for a while. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear all the information.
Yeah, definitely when I've gone solo too, like sometimes I get, smoked and, I get, taken out right away. But there's been a lot of times where I've been able to, do my missions, or just like a lot of times at the beginning too, I was just like going in just to, grab stuff, and then I'd be able to get out like right away. So I will say smoke grenades are your friend, especially when you're extracting. So they're very useful. And then one other thing with kind of like an arc raid is you're going to extract if you get downed. So even if you're solo, you'll get down, you'll be able to extract. Now I don't know. Maybe Henry, you can help me with this one. I don't know if you can start the extraction if you're still down when you're down, but I know you can still, if you had started it and then you get down, you can get out of there as long as you don't get totally killed. Once the extraction's over, so you get like I think it's 50 seconds. There's like a 50-second limit, and then at the last 10 seconds, then you can jump into it and then extract out of there. Which the one nice thing, if you're in a group, like say like two of you guys are there and one of the guys still like screwing around, or he might find somebody, the other two guys can actually get out of the extraction, and it resets the last 10 seconds. So that's kind of nice. And then if everybody jumps in, the 10 seconds starts and, you get out. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of different that I've seen other extraction shooters.
So I do have, before we get into the news segment, I do have one question for the chat. And again, I'm not being confrontational. I just want to kind of understand. So I know Innate and Hero, you guys have mentioned you're only interested in PvE, but as far as I know, you guys don't play Helldivers. And I don't know because it was on its way out. Like when I met you guys, like we played a good amount of Anthem, right? Which is a very nice PvE game. But I'd also be curious to know if you guys played Anthem, because again, the stick of this show is we ask each other challenging questions. So, so I'm pulling the thread and want to understand, like, are you guys PvE guys, or are you guys just like in general not multiplayer guys? Because I know you guys also play like a lot of single player games, I would say, as the bulk of your time. So I'll just leave that question for the chat. All right, man. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. And yeah, Henry said, yeah, you can extract when you're down. So I guess they made that available a couple updates ago. So that's nice. That's kind of cool. Because I will say those AI guys can, especially those bigger guys, they can take you out pretty quickly. So that's a good thing. And the one thing too, when they down you, they'll actually finish you off. Like they kind of come towards you, and they like these like tendrils come out and like stick to you, and they kind of suck your health down kind of a little bit faster too than you normally would when you're down. So that's kind of kind of a cool thing too. Something different than other extraction shooters.
So I know Hero mentions I can't do appointment gaming, and so that is kind of like a piece that I was looking for, because like I can't either, like, as much as I play multiplayer and PvP stuff, I don't play, like I don't want to say I don't have friends, right? But like I don't do a lot of gaming. Like I play one of the reasons I play Call of Duty, and you guys have heard me mention it on the show, is whatever I play, I've got to be able to solo it, right? And so I've got to either be able to solo it, or it has to be normalized to play with randoms. And Call of Duty is, so there's no baggage. Like I don't have to find people to go in and play with. Fortnite, even when I played Fortnite, I only really played solos. I did not tend to play in groups because in general the best way to do that is to find people that you regularly play with. And I don't play Overwatch for that reason. I quite honestly, I love Overwatch. In the couple of times that I've kind of fallen in with a group where I play regularly, I had really had a great time. But like those people, like they play Overwatch. That is their main, and I don't want Overwatch to be my main. So I'm like you, Hero. Like I can't do like appointment based stuff.
All right. Let's jump into. I didn't think we were going to spend 50 minutes on Marathon. So let's jump. It's a good thing we don't have a lot of news headlines today. Let's jump into segment 2 with our main news headlines. First up, I have here from GameIndustry.biz from Sophia McAvee. News, and I think we talked a little bit about this. We might have mentioned it a few weeks ago, last show or two, about the Newsy report, kind of going over the kind of gaming for the past year. This is from Newsy. More than half of PC revenue comes from games outside the top 20. Top performing titles continue to dominate on consoles spending despite the shifts to PC market. Games ranked outside the top 20 are capturing an increasing share of revenue and playtime in Western markets, according to Newsy data. Further analysis of the data's firm annual PC and console gaming report shows titles beyond top 20 gaining commercial significance across all platforms. Excuse me. Between 2022 and 2025, PC games outside the top 20 increased the revenue share from 48% to 56%, while playtime rose from 33 to 45%. This growth was notable among premium and back catalog titles in the US, UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. The space below the top 20 is becoming more economically meaningful, said Newsy market analysis manager Tiani Gu Guy. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. That doesn't make the market unconcentrated, but it does make games below the very top more commercially relevant than before. While shooters became less dominant, action RPGs and survival games show strong growth. Among those games performing well were Path of Exile 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, as well as back catalog games such as Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, and Skyrim. And then it kind of goes into the console stuff. Hold on, let me jump in here. Lower ranked titles accounted for 38% of the total revenue on PlayStation in 2025, up from 33% in 2023. Over the same period, playtime for those titles rose 32%. And then jump into playtime for Xbox games, not in the top 20, grew by 12%. However, these titles accounted for only 35% of revenue in 2025, indicating that the Game Pass subscription helped drives playtime. Also popular on Xbox and are RPGs and adventure games, though Newsy notes that the Game Pass enables more titles to secure visibility and trial than they might otherwise. So any comments on this one? Like I said, I think we kind of touched on this not too long ago. So, but I thought it was kind of good just to bring it up.
Yeah, so this was part of the data that was part of the Newzoo State of the Industry report that was briefed and discussed at GDC, and that Ben Porter did a podcast segment interview with on Christopher Dring's The Game Business Show. And at the time, I think when I debriefed that article, I briefly mentioned this because I didn't think it was as relevant as maybe even Newzoo was trying to make it, but definitely I didn't brief it either when I wrote about it or when we talked about it on the podcast, because I felt like giving it a ton of deference would be making much ado about nothing. And we know that the gaming community on the internet loves making much ado about nothing. So to level set, I think this is interesting. I think one of the things that needs to be like that, and this is why I kind of I'm trying to be respectful, and trying to not be cynical and not assume Newzoo wasn't trying to like paint a certain picture, because I do trust Newzoo's data, but there's things they didn't bring out when this data was printed in the overall report that I think is important. So games being outside the top 20 increased their revenue share from 48 to 56%. I think one of the things that's important is that, first of all, there are more games outside the 48 to 56%, right? The top 20 is a static number. It's a constant. It's 20, right? But there's an increasing proliferation of video games that come out every year. So it only makes mathematical sense that if in the years prior there were 15,000 games, which means that there were 14,880 games outside the top 20, and then fast forward 33 years later, and there's 19,000 games, meaning that there's 18,880 games outside the top 20, then it only makes mathematical sense that, yea, verily, they would probably generate more revenue. So, but the other thing that needs to be mixed with is kind of like we talk about in finance, where we're like, if it takes you $3 million in sales to make $500 in profit, that may or may not be better than if it takes you $4 million in sales to make $520 in profit, right? You had to do $1 million worth more of sales in order to generate $20 more revenue. And at a certain point, we talk about that being the law of diminishing returns, right? You're putting a lot more into it to get a lot less out, and we also refer to that as the juice being, the juice not being worth the squeeze. So the problem with this is, okay, they generated 8% more profit. The other thing Newzoo didn't define in here is, how much more revenue was generated, how much bigger of a pot. But the real big problem is that 8% was now atomized across 18,880 games. And so, yes, there's more, but that means at an atomic level, each individual title gets a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller piece of the pie, right? To the point of where it's like nanometers, right? worth of revenue that's being generated. So I think that's an important part of the story that didn't really get brought out. It says here the space below the top 20 is becoming more economically meaningful, and I'm like, no, I don't know that it is. Like, if it just means a crap ton more games are around to make less and less money, right? Versus a crap ton of games, a smaller number of a crap ton of games not making any money. Now there's way more games making peanuts, and I don't know that means that that's more economically meaningful. I think that's actually a problem, and I think it's part of the problem that I keep talking about, which is that the industry's oversaturated. There's too many games coming out. Each incremental title, yes, like increases its percentage chance that it's going to become a breakout hit, but the ones that aren't keep getting less and less money to the point where they're becoming a commodity. Well, not becoming, where they are a commodity. This one thing, again, in engagement time, while playtime rose from 33% to 45%, again, that means people are spending, like, the playtime rose by 12%, but the revenue only increased by 8%. There's a lot more granular math to dig into, but like in general, at a high level, that means more people are playing games for longer periods of time and spending less money. And again, I go back to where that is a problem. This is being, again, I'm trying not to be suspect of Newzoo. Like, there's a general trend that a lot of data analysts that are supposed to be impartial and unbiased seem to be focused on either painting rosy pictures or taking up mantles of like religious crusades for things that I don't know are necessarily true, in that are popular amongst people, but I think maybe don't present like a more pragmatic view. More people spending more time playing games, spending less money is not a good news story. It's actually a bad news story. And to the point of what we've been talking about on this show for the better part of a year, which is that these engagement numbers don't really matter. What's actually important is where's the spend. So again, like people are spending a lot more time, but it's not proportionally increasing the spend. And the only thing we really care about, the business really cares about at the end of the day, is the spend. I think there was one other thing in here that I felt. Playtime for Xbox games not in the top 20 grew by 12%. However, these titles accounted for only 35% of revenue in 2025. Again, while there's an ongoing discussion of Game Pass, again, not dissimilar from the other data, but what it means is that there's people spending more time playing games while spending less money, and then being probably further incentivized and further conditioned to again not spend money. And eventually, at some point, there's an event horizon where that like topples over, right, and becomes a problem. And I don't go in a lot about the Game Pass is not sustainable, but again, if you've got a lot more people drinking from the trough, right, at a minimum cover charge, this is like the bar problem, right? This is the problem of you charge people a low cover charge thinking that it's gonna get more people to come to your club or come to your bar, or you don't charge a cover charge, right, as a lot of bars would do. So they come into the bar, but the problem is if those people don't buy drinks, then it's working in counter, right? Whereas the bars that are charging a high cover charge and kind of making the club exclusive, those people are probably attracting clientele that buy drinks. And so at a certain point, like, look, I loved going to the place in my college town that didn't charge a cover charge, and where pitchers of beer were $0.25 and they gave away free pizza, but they attracted a lot of broke college kids. Right? And so the place was popular, but I don't know that the place made a lot of money. So I don't know. The data's interesting, but I think there's more to the story than maybe Newzoo printed and other and other news sites who grabbed a hold of this data kind of ran away with.
Yeah, I guess my other question too is, like, they mentioned Cyberpunk, I guess maybe not so much Elden Ring, but like Skyrim. Those have gotten re-releases on like Switch 2 and like updated, enhanced versions. I mean, did they take those into account too in those numbers? Or I'm assuming they would, right? That could be kind of the part of the boost too that they're seeing. I mean, they don't really give specifics, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. Again, the general label is this high level games outside the top 20, but those are good examples. But like another example that I chose, things like the Command and Conquer Remaster Edition, right, that dropped on Steam out of nowhere.
Yeah,
apparently generated like a ton of revenue, but was that ton of revenue at the expense of all the indie games that got blown out of the water when that thing shadow dropped out of nowhere? Was that healthy for the industry? Does that make it economically relevant? Like in the way that the data, right, is kind of articulated. Just like you're saying, if a lot of that money is going to remakes and remasters and going to big publishers, it's not the good news story, right, that it's being presented as. So
yeah. And hey, Thrifty AG, thanks for joining us in the chat. Yeah, so if you want to jump into the next news article, actually next couple that you have here.
Okay. This next news story over also on GameIndustry.biz. 44% of industry professionals have considered leaving the industry as a result of redundancies. A survey from the games recruitment firm Skill Search has found that overall 44% of respondents have considered leaving the industry due to redundancies. In the UK, 76% said they will be or are considering job hunting outside of the industry in 2026. The annual salary and satisfaction survey collected responses from 1,000 respondents across the UK, Europe, North America, APAC, and MENA regions between November 12th, 2025 and February 24th, 2026. 22% respondents had been made redundant in the past year, and 12% said they had been made redundant more than 12 months ago. The leading causes of redundancies were reduced investor funding, budget cuts, and lack of projects. Only 35% of respondents said that they or their studio had been unaffected by redundancies, while 28% said their studio had made layoffs, but they weren't personally affected. Of those who had been laid off, 45% have since secured new employment. However, only 27% so they feel secure in their new role. And there's lots of other data here. And we talked about this on Innate does a podcast called the Otter Players podcast, Otter Gang podcast. and we talked about this a little bit. One of the epiphanies that I had since I walked away from that conversation was, 44% of games industry professionals have considered leaving the industry as a result of redundancies. And I'm saying this because it's mathematically true, not to be harsh. Only 45% of the respondents have since secured new employment. That means 55% of them have already left the industry. So if, this number of 44% is actually less than it is, but more importantly, what it actually means is that the industry has already hemorrhaged a bunch of labor that there isn't sufficient demand to justify. And I can't remember what member of your panel, Innate, it was that mentioned, some of this is the overhiring that happened during the pandemic, right? And we're still probably seeing a little bit of that as people are trying to right size. But I have to say, like, in one of the current mantras that I've been on is, it goes back to the last segment that we just talked about. The industry is producing too many games right now. It's producing more games than there's sufficient demand for. There are not buyers on the market willing to buy all of the inventory. This is the standard laws of economics that Adam Smith wrote about 250 years ago in The Wealth of Nations, right? The market is seeking equilibrium, and it hasn't found it yet. And there are too many suppliers with too many employees putting out too much product that there's not sufficient demand for. And so the result of that is that there's more labor in the market than there's sufficient demand to retain. And so when I talk about all of those games, that 19,000 games that people aren't buying, a thing that needs to be understood is that, and we've kind of gone over this before, but I can't remember exactly the numbers. I've stored them away somewhere and I can get back to them, but it's something like only 8% of the games on Steam generate over $100,000, like break 100K. So what that means is that an entry-level software developer makes very close to 100K, at least 85K or more. And many of them are arguing for 100K these days coming out of college. That means a video game that comes out on Steam, only 8% of those games clear enough revenue. We're not even talking about profit. Clear enough revenue to pay the salary of one software developer. And out of revenue, you've got bills to pay. So that's not even how much you clear. So clearly they're not making enough profit to just pay salary. So, I hate to say it, but an economic truth is, the people that answered the survey that are thinking about leaving the industry, number one, some of them already left the industry, not by their own choice. And I always advocate for, if you're properly managing your career, one of my thumb rules is that if all things go well, the way my life should be led is I decide when I'm going to leave a company. I don't let a company decide, right, when I'm going to leave. And so, that should be a mantra that I think other people should adopt. And if you're in an industry where there's just not opportunity and there's not demand, you should be thinking about transitioning out of that industry, because it doesn't make sense. One of the things I talked about last night is, like, throughout all of my academic life and all my professional career, every time I've been pointed in the direction of a certain career track, people have said, don't do that. There's going to be an oversaturation. And so generally, fortunately, the advice I've always been given is, don't get yourself trained up for the job that like everybody else is getting trained up for. because there's not going to be enough opportunity. Don't be a lawyer. There's too many lawyers. Don't get an MBA. There's too many people getting MBAs. There's not going to be a use for all you guys. What we don't have in industry, at the time, was we don't have enough accountants. We don't have enough people like schooled in the math of finance. So do that. Again, don't be a lawyer. Be something else. So if, like I said, if there's an industry and there's an oversaturation, I highly advocate, don't do a thing that there's not a lot of opportunities for. I don't know. Tao, your thoughts on that? Sorry.
No, you're good. I guess yeah, it's. I mean, obviously it's rough for everybody out there right now, but especially the game industry where, it's pretty kind of I wouldn't say specialized, but uh, specialized as far as like the companies themselves. Like unless like you said, unless you're doing good, like you're in trouble. Like you're probably gonna get let go once the layoffs do start happening, unless you're like one of those super higher developers. And like here down there it says developers can work across multiple industries and tech roles. So yeah, I mean you can go into something totally different. And obviously like in the company I work at, we're not a game industry, but we have software developers. They work on all kinds of different softwares and stuff, for better or for worse. But there are, there's always, people, even in my company, there's always people kind of coming and going, depending on the roles. But, there's always something out there that you can kind of, hopefully kind of get, latched onto at some point, just doing the development side of stuff.
Yeah, and just to delve into that a little deeper, like it's not just the gaming industry. Like, look, I'm going to be honest, transparent, and open. Yes, I do think there's too much of a rock star mentality amongst like employees in the gaming industry. Where kind of people hang in there because they think they're going to be the next Vince Zamparella or Hideo Kojima. Like it's that they're going to be on stage like like Todd Howard, or I can't or gosh, I can't remember his first name now. Was it Corey Hudson who was the head of like who was the head of Anthem, the creative mind behind Anthem? Like the BioWare guys. I'm like everybody's not going to be. It's, and again, so it gets into these other like areas of life, like professional sports or like influencers. I saw somebody post on Twitter the other day that like influencers the most desired like thing that everybody wants to get into, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I got news for you. Some of us parents are teaching our kids like that doesn't make sense. And I've told my kids since they were old enough to talk that like those jobs are great, but you know what there is not for YouTubers? There's not healthcare, right? There's not a 401k. So you look at comic book creators, and Tao, you and DBQ and I like have all been in this. I'll study the space. You look at comic book creators, and like the number of sad stories of great comic book creators over the last few years, last decade, who have gotten terminally ill, passed away, contracted some horrible disease, gotten severely injured, and wind up leaving behind a spouse and children who have to do a GoFundMe or something like that because when like all of that work these in the last quarter century, all of that work has become freelance, and those guys like there's no support structure there. Again, YouTube influencers who lose their base, or the game that they're a thing of like doesn't float them anymore. Like that's like it's not the glamour, right, that a lot of people put around it. A lot of people talk about the good, but they're not open and transparent and direct about all the bad things that are associated with it. So I mean, the most blunt way I can put it is there are some people who need to get out, and go find other sources of employment that are more stable, less toxic, higher quality of life. And that's just a fact of life. And and I'm not saying that because it's the gaming industry. It applies to tons of other walks of life and career tracks that, are, just not the place that everybody needs to be. And in this case, it's just a matter of people don't need to be there simply because of volume. It doesn't matter because of talent. I'm not saying anything about like give up your dream or whatever. It's also not just a matter of like big publishers, right? It's, yes, publishers are making big layoffs, and some people are going and opening indie studios, and so you go work for an independent, and that's still only going to cover some percentage of the industry, because at the end of the day, some of you guys are going to go work for studios that are small, and their game doesn't make the sales that are needed to remain a going concern. Look at the Callisto Protocol guys, And it's not, and again, looking at Callisto Protocol, it's not enough today to make a good game. You need to make a great game, and you need to be lucky. So, I mean, unless you have a gambling problem, are those the dice you want to roll? So I don't know. Tao, any other thoughts or comments?
No, just going on that line. It's like you only do that so many times before you're out. Like your pockets are empty. But no, yeah, just you can go on to your next news story for now. Which unfortunately is about layoffs. While we're talking about this stuff right now.
Yeah. So I pulled this one mainly because Iron Galaxy, even though they're doing their own gig now, are also a known name for doing PlayStation ports, and I wonder if that has a little to do with it. If the rumor, if the assertion is true that PlayStation is going to be, not sending its tentpole IP games over to PC, that maybe that means there's less work for studios like Iron Galaxy. So there's a news story over at Game Rant. Iron Galaxy hit with more layoffs. Developer Iron Galaxy Studios has just confirmed that it's reducing its company size once again. In a post on LinkedIn, Iron Galaxy explains that this recent round of layoffs is part of a new posture that the studio is adopting to accept those current market conditions as permanent. Iron Galaxy was founded in August 2008 by Dave Lang. Initially, Iron Galaxy was formed as a work-for-hire support studio, and for many years it focused primarily on porting some rather high-profile games to and from PC. These projects included the likes of Batman Arkham Asylum, Borderlands, the Handsome Collection, Fortnite, and recent Sony first-party PC ports like The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 and Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. Over the last 18 years, Iron Galaxy has also developed a handful of original games, such as Rumbleverse and the studio's most recent release, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4. While the former was considered a bit of a live service failure, the latter performed well with critics, with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 earning a top critic average of 83 on OpenCritic. I think and again, I'm not saying this to be harsh. I'm saying this just because it's reality. I think it's also generally accepted that Iron Galaxy was not the best Sony PlayStation PC port studio. It was typically their games that would land and really not be very good. And then the way I used to phrase it is, and then the damage control parties at PlayStation and the first party studios would have to break out the buckets and mops to de-water the flooding space and turn the game around, which they would do within typically like the first 30 days and get them back to, because I think in general, I get the feeling in the sense that in general, PlayStation does not like its first party PC games being on Steam with that red or yellow like rating, font that Steam applies to when games are mostly negative or mixed. They want their games in the blue. They want them mostly positive, overwhelmingly positive. And Iron Galaxies typically did not stick the landing on a lot of its PlayStation ports. So it's unfortunate that they're hitting layoffs, but it's interesting that, again, what they're saying is the reason they're doing this is because a lot of what gets discussed today, which is that prevailing market conditions, like it's not these things aren't temporary, right? There's a major shift going on. I've spoken at length and done a lot of analysis on what is going on. I won't get into all that tonight, but there are fundamental economic shifts that have been occurring. I'll state that the studies I have done have been in the United States, and a lot of people will say, well, the United States isn't the whole market. No, but the United States and China are the two biggest parts that are driving the PC market. So it's probably likely that dynamics we're seeing in the United States are having a huge ripple effect and formulate a large percentage of what's going on in the gaming market. And there are some hyper-specific things that are going on in the economy with regards to spend on entertainment in games. That's corroborated by the Circana data that's out there as well. So, again, I point back to there's probably not going to be enough demand, to float everyone, particularly like an Iron Galaxy, who is one PC port studio out of 3 that, for PlayStation, looks like it's down to 1, and then where they're talking about a significant amount of that work, no longer being a thing that's going to be scoped. So, Tao, you are a big player of skateboard games. So, Any personal feelings or insight into kind of what's going on with Iron Galaxy?
I actually didn't play 3 and 4, Pro Skater 3 and 4. I played the first one, which I don't think they did since they didn't list it here. But I was thinking of Rumbleverse. I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. And yes, I remember Rumbleverse was there, kind of like I guess more melee centric, almost wrestling battle royal game, which I kind of got into. And then literally a week later, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna shut it down." So I was like, "God, it's great," which I think might have been this within the same year, like a year later of when what was that? The dodgeball game. I can't remember what it was called now. It was like the 3-on-3 dodgeball game that they
Yeah,
eventually sunsetted.
we played. Yeah, I mean, we played a chunk of it. Kick. Was it Kick something? I can't remember. I'll
I
look
can't
it up.
remember. Yeah, but it was kind of along the same thing where I got that one was lasted a little bit longer at least. I think Rumbleverse wasn't even like a year. I think when they shut it down. So, but it was actually a good time. I did like that game a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's a bummer once again to see.
That was Knockout City, by the way.
Knockout City. Okay, yeah. Another. Actually, the second round, I guess they had like 66 people. I think it said at the near the bottom of the article from the first round from last year, and they didn't specify how many people this time were laid off, but it's probably a significant amount, I'm sure. So yeah, kind of stinks. So did they're always just kind of a separate company, right? They were never owned by Sony.
No, so the port studios that PlayStation had leaned on before were Nix's, which they bought, Bluepoint, which they bought, but have now since closed, and then Iron Galaxies was the other third. I think they've given some work to virtual. It's either virtual or visual. It's not Visual Concepts. I think it's Virtual Studios. Is that the actual name? I'll look it up, but it's some studio that starts with a V. That studio is actually like a super large company with like 1,000+ employees, and who are constantly churning on like multiple projects. But I'm not certain if they ever brought them in for anything. But basically, they have those 3 studios doing the ports in some flavor, and they were kind of in a rotation. And so, if there was too much work for Nixon to do, then that would get passed off to Iron Galaxies. Bluepoint came along and did the one from Software remake. I don't recall if I think they did another port as well. So they were kind of in the rotation, but Virtuos Studios. But here I ask, is there an Iron Galaxy? Like Nix's aren't they getting enough work? And I think, like this is my speculation and this is my guess. I think the answer to that is no. I think this decision, maybe if that PlayStation is not sending any more of its first party IP games, tentpole franchises over to PC, means that no, there's not that work is not going to be subcontracted out to those studios. And I think that maybe is a part of what played into Bluepoint being shut down. There were lots of things that Bluepoint was trying to do that didn't get approved. But I think I'm guessing another part of it was like, hey, if all else fails and these guys can't get it together and like do their own game, or From Software's not going to greenlight us doing another remake of theirs, then we have also made a decision that means there's not going to be scope to be allocated to Bluepoint to churn more first party PC titles because we're not sending them to PC anymore. So that may very well have been part of what was in the mix in decision making about Bluepoint, and it may also be impacting Iron Galaxies here, where that at least was part of the work that was getting funneled to them that may no longer be getting funneled to them. So they've got to find some other stuff to do.
All right, let's jump into our last segment number 3, unless you have any other comments on any of these stories. All right, for our regular rundown and round robin gamer experience cleanup. Speaking of Call of Duty, Mr. Game Logic, you have Call of Duty here up on Call of Duty Black Ops 7 for PC that you've been playing still.
Yeah, I don't have anything to really brief out as far as like gameplay. There's nothing really new. I have been digging into, I think they are called, I got a bookmark here, esports.gg. And I've kind of gone into, getting back a little bit more to pulling, threads on, and yes, Henry, Virtuos Studios. Pulling the thread on like tactics and best practices and things. So I know I can't remember. So two submachine guns have kind of been in the writing out there about most powerful weapons are best things to jump on in season 3 of Call of Duty, and so I've built loadouts around those. One is I think the MPC 25, and I can't remember what the other one is. And then there's an assault rifle. I don't have a loadout built around this, but there's an assault rifle that I want to say is like something that starts with an I, like the ISR 35 or something like that. And I've had the unfortunate to see myself getting capped in some best play of games, and on a couple of occasions, and people have had that assault rifle armed. So, but yeah, I'm just going through, and a couple of the changes I've made is this year I've stopped being a weapons unlock kind of prostitute. So in past years I used to be hyper focused on like I'm gonna unlock like as many of these weapons as I can, and like trying to march through doing the pain of doing matches only using pistols so I get a kimbo. And now I'm not doing that. Like as I go through each level of prestige, it's kind of like, and they reset the loadouts. Like I make one loadout, and I just use that weapon for like the first 20 levels till you get overkill, to try and get master class and prestige that weapon as much as I can. So I'm definitely spending more time this year going deep on a smaller number of weapons than trying to unlock everything. That's actually been pretty fun. I think it's part of a paradigm that they're trying to drive. I know they've done that in a couple years, a version of Call of Duty like maybe 2 years in the past, where it was when they were reoriented this whole thing about weapons platforms. They were trying to drive, we want people to be more hyper specialized and just focus on like using the smaller number of weapons and like building loadouts around that. And so that's definitely the way that I'm playing it now, and having a pretty decent time, despite the, I won't necessarily say criticism, but despite like the kind of rotten shine that there is on like how much of the vault they're going back into this year to like grab older versions of maps and kind of regurgitate them. I do have to say, like, I feel like the current map rotation is like one of the best map rotations they've had in a while. Like I think you were mentioning like a few episodes ago, like that there's like no maps you hate. Like whereas in past years, I was like every time a new season would roll out, I'd be like, yeah, this map is poo poo. Like there's always, I feel like there's always like there's 2 or 3 maps per bundle that are like such a horrible map. I don't like some of the things that they're doing, like where they take hijacked and make it and put it in like the domination rotation, like that I'm not crazy about, because like these ridiculously small maps where like there's 0 transit time right between one domination point to the other. I'm like, no, we don't need that in the domination rotation. Hard point, okay, because everybody's got to kind of jump up and like transition to the new hard point, but like when I can literally throw a football right from one domination point to the other, like I don't know that we need that. But in general, like a lot of the new maps, that I've seen too, like there's not a lot that I hate on. So having a good time playing that. I think I'm like prestige 5 now, level 20, 21, I think. I am playing the SBMM modes, so which there's a very limited rotation of those. So it'll be interesting to see, as Call of Duty runs into the economic adversity that it's apparently been facing, which is primarily around Game Pass. I also, am still kind of wondering, does that also have anything to do with, SBMM and the number of players that they had onboarded because of that, the prevalence of that mode, and seeing if they kind of shift design approach for this year's version. So we'll see. And then the other thing I've been playing is NBA 2K26 on the PlayStation 5 Pro. Again, coming back from vacation, I'm definitely kind of pointed and tilted in this direction of probably playing a lot of games that are kind of the grind. And last year when I re-onboarded the consoles, I said one of the things I wanted to do was get back into sports titles, and so that's what I'm doing here with NBA 2K26. An interesting aside to that also is I want to spend some time playing the Switch 2 in handheld mode this week. And so I was getting it ready, and I was like, well, I probably want to play something close to the same thing I'm playing in other places. And I was like, okay, well, I don't play shooters on consoles, much less handhelds. So I said, well, what about, do I have a version of 2K on there? And I think I have like 2K18 or 2K23, something like that. But just on a whim, I went to the eShop, and NBA 2K26 is like $8 right now on the eShop. So I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. so I grabbed that, and I'll probably play that a little bit this week. But when I uninstall and reinstall games on PlayStation or Xbox, I'm reminded that I'm not subscribed to those services anymore, so I don't have cloud saves. So I was like, oh wow, we'll be starting this sports season over again. So this time I am playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I've been out of watching basketball for so long I didn't even realize that was a thing. Much less that they are the previously known Seattle. Are they the Supersonics or just the Sonics? I can't remember which.
Supersonics. Yeah.
Supersonics. Yeah. So yes, I am playing them, which is a bit of a cheat since I guess they won the championship last year. But I'm also not playing sports games to hyper stress. I just want an accurate sports game. So I think I'm 0-2 right now. Just dropped a game to the Hawks, which I wasn't really happy about. But yeah, I'm going to try and trudge through an 86 game season, which will be an interesting thing because that is not normally my approach. But yeah, that's what I'm into these days.
Thanks. To go back to actually both of these games real quick. Call of Duty. Speaking of game or maps that I don't like, there's that one map. It's like you're on a frozen lake. I think there's like a cabin, like in the middle of it.
Oh, I think it's called Hideout, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that one I don't like.
Yeah,
it's a weird layout to that one.
Yeah.
Not very big either, surprisingly.
There's a little. I will say that map tends to lend itself to a lot of kind of toxic gameplay, a lot of camping.
Yeah, spawn camping. A lot of spawn
yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's also not like I started this year saying when I said I was going to play fewer weapons, I was like, okay, I'm just going to play like assault rifles and LMGs, right? Because good all around weapons that are good on CQB maps as well as kind of mid range maps. And then I said, no, I'll go ahead. And so I have a couple loadouts, with shotties and a couple loadouts with submachine guns, and that problem is always like, so those weapons are not good like on medium range maps, and so I have a loadout now, just for when I prestige to 5, my my one loadout that I configured was with shoddy, and then I wound up like with hideout. It's like I spent a lot of time getting capped at long range from people running down the edges. So, but I don't hate it. Do you not use any of the, because there are swim lanes, right, where you can dive down underneath the ice and come up?
Yeah, I know about that, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's just the one building that's there. Like, there's nothing else. Like in most other maps, there's at least a couple different areas you can kind of go into and stuff. It's just the one building, so everybody just congregates on that. Concentrates on that and get that building, mostly on the second floor, in the back of it. But just kind of all around it too. So yeah,
because you can use wall climb to get up there. So
yeah, or just spam grenades into it.
Yeah, it's not a great domination map because you constantly get people wall climbing to get up to the second floor, and then assaulting down into the domination point. At least with hardpoint, like I said, the thing rotates, so you only get a little bit of that. But yeah, and then the other two domination points, then the one of the domination points is also under a bridge, which isn't a great situation either. But
yeah, sometimes I forget about that you can climb on stuff, especially in those older maps, like on Firing Range. There's that one tower. You can actually climb up the one side now. Like, you couldn't do that. Obviously, you couldn't do that before. You can only go up the ladder side, but now you can climb up that one side. It's like, oh, how did I get killed? And then, oh yeah, I forgot you could just jump up there. But yeah, and funny enough, so my Game Pass ran out a couple weeks ago, and I went to go play it a week and a half ago, coincidentally. I was like, oh, my Game Pass is over. I was like, I want to play a shooter, and I didn't feel like playing Battlefield or Fortnite. I was like, what do I want? that's when I jumped on Marathon. So I was like, oh, Marathon, I'll try that out. So yeah, it's kind of funny how that. And I'm probably gonna re-up again next month just because I want to play the new Forza when that comes out. So I'll probably jump back on to Black Ops 2 or Black Ops 7, excuse me. Also, once I get that. So
Well, just another thing to to add on to that, Call of Duty facing economic adversities, yeah, like you put it in Game Pass, which has encouraged a lot of people to not buy it. But by the same token, when people are thinking about other options that they have to buy, you have an Arc Raiders and a Marathon, which are just barely over half the price, right, of Call of Duty. So
yeah, just regular price. Yeah, they're both 40. Yeah, it's nice. Okay, and then NBA. Yeah, I had picked up. Actually, I picked up a bundle NBA 2K26 and WWE 25. I think it was like a month and a half ago or so. So that was like $15. I was like, oh yeah, that was a no brainer too with both of those. So yeah, I was kind of surprised that 26 was on sale again so soon for only that $8. So, but yeah, I played a little bit of it. I started like the career mode or whatever it's called in 2K26. Kind of you start off in, I think you'd play like one game in high school, maybe two games, and then you go into like your college or whatever. So yeah, so it's cool. It's good. I liked it on the Switch, so you should have fun time with it. So my two games, both cozy games, still playing Pokopia on Switch 2. Actually, both of these are Switch 2. Just going around, I wouldn't say catching Pokemon, but unlocking Pokemon and, trying to level up my areas. I finally got off well, I had unlocked one area before for a while actually, but I was kind of just trying to concentrate on that first area. Just trying to, I think you can go up to level 10. You basically level up each area, and I think 10 is the limit. I kind of got stuck, so I was like, oh, maybe I have to go into those other areas to unlock stuff. So I finally was starting to level up the other area. So I'm in that area now and just unlocking a bunch of stuff and kind of doing a little bit of like kind of island building management. You're just kind of building things and giving Pokemon houses to live in and stuff like that. So I've been doing that. But then my other cozy game that I just picked up this past week was Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, which I believe there's another one. I don't know if it was on the original Switch, maybe even before that. Kind of same thing, kind of like Pokopia and Animal Crossing. You have this island that you have these. Actually, you're using Mii's in this case, which is like kind of interesting because this, haven't really used Mii's in I think forever in any games. So you make your Mii or you can use it from your system, which is actually what I did, just copied from my system. But then you can make all the other residents of the island too. Like as you level up, you can add more residents to your island. So you can either make them yourself from scratch, or you get help, which basically kind of gives you like a little bit of a template. You go through a couple screens, and then at the end, it's like here's your character, and it basically just generates it for you. So it's just kind of nice. So I've been doing that. But like once again, there's a little. You don't actually control the characters in this game. They kind of go about and do their own thing. You can kind of pick them up and like put them next to each other, or put them on something that you might placed on the island, like a seesaw or something. I bought that and put that down, and they'll play with it and stuff like that. So you kind of just like place things along the island for them to interact with, and then you can make, as you level up, you can have buildings constructed for like clothing and food and whatever, just more stuff for your island and stuff like that. So I've been playing a little bit of that these past couple of days. I haven't had a chance to play too much, which is kind of why I didn't put it up on top in the gaming, the gamer experience segment, just because I haven't had a ton of time. So I want to play a little bit more and then kind of maybe report more on it next week. So that's all I had. I had one more thing too, little tech thing. Got a new controller. It is an Easy SMX controller, and this is mainly I'm going to use this on the Switch, but you can use it on your PC too, and on your phone. So it has all the bells and whistles of basically a Pro controller. See, it's kind of weird and it does have actually 2 additional buttons on the back, so it's just actually kind of nice. Only for $60, so it's a little cheaper than a regular Pro controller, I think, which is like 90, I believe, or 80, somewhere around there. But like I said, it has gyro, it has the amiibo support, so you can do the amiibo stuff, which there have been other like third-party controllers, but a lot of times they didn't have like everything. that a regular Pro Controller has. So it's actually kind of nice. Pretty hefty. I think it's a little bit smaller than a regular Pro Controller. I'm not sure about the Pro Controller 2 because I haven't bought any of those yet. But it's got the heft to it, which I like. That the first party Pro Controllers have, which is really nice. But yeah, once again, I've only played a little bit with it. The only thing you can kind of take off and change is the D-pad, which kind of comes off. There's just kind of a circle. It's the one that comes with it, and then it has just like a regular kind of like a plus, like the regular plus D-pad that you get.
And what did you say the name of that is?
Easy SMX. S is in Sam, and M is in Mary, and then X as in Xerox xylophone.
Okay.
So I was just kind of looking around, just trying to see if there's any good 30-party controllers because I didn't really want to pay like $90 for a Pro Controller. Especially they don't have any I usually like to get like themed ones, like the Pro Controller ones, but they don't have any of those out right now, which is kind of surprising. Especially like when the Pokemon and stuff came out, I figured there'd be one for those, but I don't think they made one for those that I saw. But yeah, it's seems like I said, I only played a little bit, but it seems pretty nice. The A, B, X, Y buttons are a little clicky, so it's a little bit of a noise there than most controllers, but that's not too bad. And then I'm just going to jump into where's that? So it does have the sticks are TMR sticks, so not Hall effect sticks, but like I said, it has everything else, so it's actually pretty nice. And it has like a replaceable faceplate, which is fine. I think the other one I got, like, it gives you an extra one. That's just like a clear faceplate. But other than that, it seems to be pretty nice so far. But hopefully, I'll report on that a little bit more. Play a little bit more than just. I think I used to with Tomodachi Life, which is really not putting it through its paces. So I'll try to report a little bit more on it next week. So that is it for tonight. Unless you had any other games you want to mention or comments on anything this past show.
No, and is that the S10?
That is, I believe, yeah, it's the S10. Yep.
Yeah, so that retails for $59.99, which is a good get.
Yeah, I haven't done anything with the back controls. I want to once No Man's Sky gets updated on, because they just had the recent update actually a couple weeks ago. Hopefully we'll get it this week with their Pokemon mode that they put in there, kind of their arena battler mode that you can use, like the little creatures, the different creatures you find on the planets. I want to kind of use it with that, because when I'm playing on Steam Deck, I actually use those back paddles for like running and stuff and doing some other things. So I want to kind of do that with this controller, make it a little bit easier, but put it through its paces fairly well. I think I played a little bit of Rocket League, which it's a little bit more, but I want to kind of play a either maybe like Cyberpunk or maybe like the Assassin's Creed or something like that. Just kind of see how it feels. So, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, and that controller also works with it works with Switch 2 and Switch 1, PC, Steam Deck, Android, and iOS.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Good variety there.
Has a wired connection as well, or connects over Bluetooth. Has a turbo function.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. So that was I saw that and I was like, "Well, that's weird. That's interesting." I should say, because I haven't seen one of those in like forever.
Yeah, and then then the docking station is like $45. So like for the price of a first party Pro Controller, a little bit more, you can get a controller and a charging base station, which is pretty good.
Yep.
Anything these things work with? So no, they don't work with Xbox or PlayStation.
No,
at least not this version. But yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty nice so far. Hey, Warwana, coming in at the tail end, and yes, we did have our marathon talk at the beginning of the show, so definitely jump back and talk about that if you get a chance. But probably be talking about it more, I'm sure, in the next few weeks also. So, all right, so that is it for this week. Let's jump into the significant releases for the coming week. First up, we have Jay and Silent Bob Chronic Blunt Punch coming out for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC on April 20th. It's basically a side scroller, kind of like the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Marvel Invasion that just came out not too long ago. And then we have Vampire Crawlers for PS5, PC, Xbox Series XX, and Switch, which is set in the Vampire Survivors universe, but it's more of a deck builder game. So which I completely forgot that was coming out, and I didn't realize it was so soon because I think they just announced it like a month or two ago. I think at least that's when I saw it. So that's probably something I'll be looking forward to. Tides of Tomorrow coming out April 22nd for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. I think Game Legend, you put that in there. What is that one about?
So Tides of Tomorrow is a game that I'm pretty sure was at the last PlayStation State of Play, maybe the one before that. I think it was in the one earlier this year, but that is like it's a little like Death Stranding. So it seems like it's kind of a water world setup. But the other part of it is it feels like there's this kind of a Death Stranding element to it in terms of the social features where if another player has come through an area that you're going through and has done things, it's possible that like the things that they did will be reflected in your playthrough if you're coming through after them. So in the trailer, what they showed was one player had gotten into an altercation with a guy and had thrown him in the water. And so when another player came through there, they ran into that character, and that character was like freezing. And had stripped off a lot of their clothes, and so like the other player who came by, granted them some charity or some assistance or whatever because the character that they passed was in a different state or condition than like the other person had. So it's going to be a pretty interesting title with maybe some unique gameplay. So it'll be interesting to see how it lands.
Nice. And then we have Kiln for PC, PS5, Xbox Series XS for on April 23rd. Was that
That is Tim Schafer's
okay? That's what I thought.
game. I shouldn't call it Tim Schafer's new game. I call it that because I always forget the name of their studio. So it's a new Double Fine game.
Double Fine, yeah.
And it's multiplayer because Tim has somebody else who's shepherding it. There's another guy who did the developer direct, but yeah, they were part of the developer direct back in January. Game comes out. It is multiplayer, which is not Double Fine's like pedigree, and so Matt Booty on his recent scripted interview on the official Xbox podcast mentioned that I forget what studio he mentioned was helping out, but one of their first party studios that has more expertise in multiplayer, I think maybe Machine Games, is helping Double Fine out with that, which is the type of cross pollination that I would expect, like from Xbox. If you're going to go out and acquire 30 studios, like it doesn't make sense for you to have a studio making a whiff with a game when you've got a set subject matter experts at another studio on that particular genre or gameplay loop or something. So it's good to finally see some of that come into fruition over at Xbox.
Next up also on April 23rd, and I put this in there originally just because of the title. I thought it was pretty funny, but Kingdom's Return, Time Eating Fruit, and the Ancient Monster, coming out for PC, Switch 1 and 2, PC, PS5, and Xbox Series XS. It's actually an action RPG, a little bit different though because it's action RPG plus city builder. When you're actually fighting this on like a 2D plane, so you kind of going just side scrolling back and forth. And then you kind of, as you kind of, level up and stuff, you can go into the kingdom and basically build that up. So that's the kind of the city building aspect of it. So looks pretty interesting, actually. I think I might pick that up. It's actually going to be on sale too, or it's actually on sale will be until May 4th, or I'm sorry, May 23rd for $13.49, at least on the Switch. So I'm not sure about anything else, but looks kind of interesting for me. Just kind of put in as a kind of a goof because of the title. Just thought it was an interesting title, but I might pick that up also. And then we have Sudden Strike 5 for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. That's also April 23rd. Is that one of the kind of like the helicopter, like the old Desert Strike ones?
No. This is, if I'm not mistaken, I maybe made an assumption when I saw this game title, but it is more of like a tactical turn-based, squad-based tactical turn-based game. So it's kind of one of those games where you go in, partially to it's partially stealth, and you're like the game I talked about a couple weeks ago, the
Shadow Tactics, is that what
Shadow Tactics Way of the Shogun, yes, but it is more like a I think it's I can't remember if it's World War II. World War II might be Commandos. I think this might be more modern day, or maybe at least kind of Vietnam War era, or post World War II modern.
Yeah, actually, it does look like World War II. I'm looking on Steam right now. Yeah, World War II.
I often get that. I often get Commandos, Sudden Strike, and Jagged Alliance mixed up. But I think they're all kind of games like in the same genre vein.
All right, cool. So lots coming out. Are you looking forward to any of those? Sudden Strike, maybe, or anything on this list that you might pick up?
No. I mean, nothing's like Tides of Tomorrow. I have been interested to see how it kind of lands. It was kind of a unique title that kind of stuck out at the PlayStation State of Play, so I'm very curious to see how that shows up and how it arrives, and if the gameplay loop is as differentiated as it gave me the impression that it was. Like there hasn't been, like, the developers haven't been talking a lot, and there hasn't been a lot of additional news about it. I think it was originally supposed to come out maybe in March, and it got pushed. So for right now, it's just something I'm keeping an eye on to see how it lands.
Nice. All right, that is it for episode number 431. Thank you, everybody, in the comments that stopped by. Here down under Thrifty, Real Innate, Henry Heck, Wara at the end there. Sorry, you kind of came in kind of late. Oh, Wara, just so you know, we did have a 50-minute discussion on Marathon, so be prepared for that one. So we talk about it in pretty good detail. Of course, Game Logic, thank you for joining me tonight. Any last words before we head out here?
Nope, I don't have anything else.
All right, cool. So please, if you stop by, thank you once again. Or if you've watched this later on in VOD, please leave any comments as usual. We love the discussion tonight. It was pretty big in there, especially during the marathon and other things. A couple of other news sites or news segments there. Next week, Game Logic will be the primary host, with myself and DBQ Hams should be here to co-host. Once again, thank you everybody for stopping by. Thank you, Game Logic, and we will see you next week. Have a good week.